kids, learn to spell with me. G is for Giovanni, and we're gonna get to all the other letters later. In all seriousness, this is the modern depiction of like the symbol for Giovanni in version 5 of the game of Vampire the Masquerade. And this is like the most unimaginable depiction possible, considering that like Tzimitzi get like a dragon, Lasombra get a crown, Tremere get to play with shapes, and Giovanni get G is for Giovanni. To be fair, they're now like part of Clan Hecata, and Hecata has a proper portrayal of like a symbol representing them. So I suppose we can accept alphabet letters for the time being. Giovanni was the youngest clan inside Vampire the Masquerade possible. Also, hello, you're currently watching Vampire the Masquerade Necromancer Bloodlines. This is the last one that we're going to be investigating. Afterwards, we're just going to be investigating bloodlines that are kind of interesting but have at no point ever counted as a clan. If at any point in this video you're confused, I suggest starting this series all the way from the beginning, as that way a lot of things will be clearer, especially considering that when I talk about something in one episode, oftentimes it becomes like actually somewhat relevant in a different one. So it's just like a good thing to know all of like the base clans before you start the necromancer clans. And it's, for example, good to know what Cappadocian was, which was the previous episode, before you start getting into Giovanni. Or if you get into Giovanni first, you then need to learn what the Cappadocian was afterwards, because they're kind of, everything is a bit interconnected, is what I'm trying to say. So then, Giovanni was the youngest clan until Clan Hecata was formed from the remnants of Giovanni and other necromancer clans, as it was established in the year 1444. Before that, Giovanni at first started as a family in Italy called Giovanus, later anglicized to Jovians, and eventually became Giovanni. And they dealt with necromancy. They called it negromancy, but they dealt with necromancy, and they were researching in that direction, and they were using it to boost their own personal wealth and gains in the material world, as opposed to Cappadocians, which the main Cappadocian was just like, I'm gonna eat God. That is a completely normal life goal to have. But as a mortal family, Giovanni's, they were a little bit more humble. They just wanted necromantic power in order to boost themselves in the living, waking world, which is like a completely normal application of necromancy. So the whole family as like a vampire thing starts in year 2000, 1005, when Augustus Giovanni gets embraced into the Cappadocian clan. He gets embraced for his necromantic knowledge. He has gotten proposals from other vampire clans, but this was the lowest possible like starting generation that he could get from any other clans, because now he's starting a generation 4 as he's getting embraced by Cappadocius himself. So that gives him power. And also, Cappadocians, outside of like having this very specific goal, they're pretty docile, and he perceived them as being easy to manipulate. So he gets embraced into the Clan Cappadocian, and he proceeds over time to embrace his own family. And it kind of established a bit of a rule in here. Giovanni will not embrace outside of family, and a lot of Giovanni prefer to only deal with other Giovanni, which means that their mortal family tends to end up a little bit a lot inbred. Let's put it that way. But the goal is to bring his own family into this clan and start planning with them from there on end. What you see as a background right now, this is a picture from Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines. If you wonder how this relates, this was in a level that was called a Giovanni stronghold, and it was their one of their family like reunion events that they threw, and it was in that building, hence why it is the background for this video. So he embraces his family and he has bigger goals than that. Well, not all of his family, he always will have some mortal family. So in the year 1444, he sends a child of his, Claudius Giovanni, to diablerize Japheth, which was the most beloved of Cappadocia's children. The reason why he did it was because this now makes it a distraction. So, like, if his kid fails to eat another vampire, then like you can just kind of dispose of that dude. The blame doesn't need to go to you, but it draws eyes onto this happening, especially considering that Camarilla have kind of formed by now and they don't like vampires eating elder vampires, so they're kind of really against that. So this dude was like, okay, you go and execute your plan. And in the meanwhile, Augustus Giovanni goes and tries to eat Cappadocius himself. And both of these people succeed. The moment they succeed, all of the wraiths, all of the ghosties, all of everything that Cappadocius had and controlled suddenly kind of belonged to the Giovanni. And the Giovanni start using that to rapidly purge the rest of the Cappadocians from existence to establish themselves as like an actual existing clan. By 1528 year, they have established a promise with Camarilla that states that the Giovanni leaves Camarilla alone and Camarilla leaves Giovanni alone, because by this point they have usurped enough of the Cappadocian clan and they have established enough power that that faction doesn't really wanna like fight with them, so they're like, yeah, sure, whatever, just stay away, it's fine, you do your thing, we're gonna do our thing. And they establish that agreement, which allows the Giovanni to continue persecuting the rest of the Cappadocian brood. They never fully like succeed, spoilers, but they kind of do believe themselves to be successful because they do eradicate majority of the Cappadocians. Now, after taking power from the Cappadocians and Cappadocians, Augustus Giovanni kind of looked over what they were doing and looked over what kind of plans they had, the whole eat god thing, and he announced that his family's goal in particular will be to collapse the realm of ghosts into the realm of the living to kind of establish themselves as like the most powerful place, person, family in that whole cycle. So for that, they wanted to increase the amount of ghosts that they have and the amount of finances that they have so that they can cause financial strain, economic disasters, fund wars, because this creates unhappy people that have still not taken care of their plans, which leaves more ghosties inside the ghost realm, which allows Giovanni to exploit more ghosties inside the ghost realm, with the ultimate goal being of collapsing the ghost realm both from within and from without. So that whole veil just completely disappears, and all of the ghosties end up, majority of them, in his control in like the direct world. I don't know what his plan was after that point, but they never got to that point. So that was like the big major thing. The same way that I can't really say what Cappadocius wanted to do after eating a god, but he never like got to eating the god. Now, mind you, when you dispose of necromantic vampires, we have established previously that that might be a bad idea because they tend to stick around. So both of the diablerized people stuck around. There was like only once that Giovanni previously, now the lore has been corrected afterwards, but only once have they embraced outside of clan, and they embraced a woman who was supposed to be their dinner, but they got a surprise attack during that whole feast, so they kind of embrace that woman in order to just throw her at the attackers as a distraction so that they can run away. And for example, that woman was then guided by the ghost of Cappadocius and learned a lot of necromantic secrets and managed to really aid in the destruction of the Giovanni in the years to come. So you see, you kill necromancers, and they just kind of stick around. Now, mind you, the events were happening on the ghosty side, so the ghost of the Cappadocius eventually kind of was made to disappear because there were always wars and always power imbalances and all sorts of like disasters happening on like both sides, and that is entirely neither here nor there. So I'm just saying that despite the fact that they ate the Cappadocius, the Cappadocius of the Cappadocians, he kind of stuck around, and like his child that they ate, like the fourth generation vampire, was it? Yeah, it would have been the fourth generation vampire that they ate. He kind of also stuck around, being one of the three people that wore like a very specific person mask, whom Giovanni ended up doing a significant amount of business afterwards, that then had a significant amount of influence over Giovanni and other necromantic bloodlines that kind of contributed to the whole Hecata becoming a thing as well. So, like, imagine this: you're the Giovanni, you kill off the Cappadocians, you start like hunting them down one by one after like your diablerie of Cappadocia succeeds, and a mysterious figure approaches you with unprecedented knowledge of necromancy, known only as the Capuchin because he was wearing the robes of a Capuchin monk. And this figure, this mysterious figure, the people that he can be is Lazarus, the Cappadocian vampire that escaped the whole Cappadocius' cleansing of the clan. He could also be Jofeth Cappadocius, which is the shoulder that the Giovanni have eaten, but because eating necromancers oftentimes produces ghosties, and ghosties can re-enter the mortal realm and take possession of like a body. So that is like another possibility. But like this dude, he dealt with Giovanni by selling secrets to them. He dealt with Tal Mahara, which was the overseers of Nagaraja, trading secrets with them. He dealt with like the remainers of harbingers of skulls, I'm pretty much, because to them he is a savior. he dealt with the Baron of the Samedi. So Samedi view him as like a rival. And he managed to manipulate everyone to a point where then he establishes himself as like the leader of the newly created clan Hecata. So Augustus Giovanni was like really politicking and like webbing this web of going, okay, I'm gonna like eat the Cappadocians, I'm gonna take their place, I'm gonna like make my own family powerful. And like the stranglers of the remaining Cappadocian clan are just being 5 steps ahead of him. And considering that he has selected the Necromancer clan to do this with, yeah, necromancers leave ghosties. Bad idea. Like, if Cappadocius was still around, he would have realized that himself when the Harbingers of Skulls became a thing from as a split off from like the Cappadocian clan. But more about that in the previous video, which you probably should see. So there's like a whole bunch of like webs being webbed that Augustus Giovanni is completely oblivious to. From his perspective, things are going cheeky breeky. He is eradicating Lamia. He is eradicating the remainder of Cappadocians. He has negotiated a truce with the Camarilla, so neither will attack neither. He gets to establish his own like hold over like the whole necromancy thing by going, yeah, I am the king of necromancy. My family is the family for necromancy, and we never embrace outside of family. And then he establishes like allied families to his own family, like the Milliners, Delia Passalia, Pisanob, Ghiberti. And these families, they do get embraced into Clan Giovanni, but they are seen as like second hand, as like worse off. So while the Giovanni look down on everybody not Giovanni even more, these are like the lesser Giovanni. And with those families as well, is they're not gonna be embracing outside of family. This is something that you need to be born into. And they have like a slew of their own traditions. They're running this like a cutthroat mafia where you really need to excel and exceed in order to be even considered for like a position of a vampire. Their family is entirely oblivious to the fact that vampirism is even happening in the background. From the mortal perspective, their family is just a little bit inbred because they never like marry outside of family, and they are into kind of a bit of a freaky shit, and they're very cutthroat and not very legal, and they will do anything to secure large amounts of finances, but they're entirely not aware that like the whole vampire thing is happening behind the closed doors. The mortals that are seen as really, really, really promising, they will be first brought on as a ghoul. And Giovanni, being lapsed Catholics, will make a huge, like, procession out of this, almost like an unholy mass, where you become a ghoul when you drink a little bit of, like, a vampire's blood. And from explanations given on, like, the Wikipedia page and, like, the books, they will try making another Giovanni into a ghoul that is then put into the possession of the secret of, hey, a lot of the family is actually like undead necromancers. They will try to make this very memorable, if not in a very shocking way, which might mean throwing in a black mass, which might mean extracting your blood from your family member's dick, you know, that sort of thing. And if you get into the whole being a ghoul thing, you need to further prove yourself as a really exceptional member to then be made into a vampire. And once again, this will be done with weird ritualistic procession where they will even like throw you a party. because you understand what's happening and where you're going. And one way that they kept family cohesion is a person cannot embrace their own direct line and turn them into a vampire. So if you had like a mortal child, you can't make them into a vampire, but you can propose to the rest of the family that he is a promising candidate for vampirism. And then a different branch of the family, like just like your cousin or your aunt or whatever, will then make them a vampire, because that way your child is still related to you and therefore feels feelings for you and is very loyal to you, but also has been brought into undeath by like their aunt or uncle or whatever, like third rate cousin. So they're now loyal to that as well. Therefore, the whole family is less likely to infight. And outside of being a very cutthroat place, it is for the most part worked. And when I say that the whole thing being made into a vampire was very ritualistic, it was very ritualistic. Like, you would show up in your best clothes and then you would undress like right in front of your future vampire daddy, and you would be like, take me daddy, except in a lot more words than that. So they had like this whole thing going. Now, whether that whole thing was healthy family dynamic, heck no. They had orgies, they had like mass killings, they ran it like a mafia, they were very far spread like Italy. They had unreasonable dealings with other families that they also took underneath their wings, but they always considered themselves to be really superior. Incest, you know, none of that was like reasonable or nice, but they had like this whole system figured out and things were going fairly smoothly for them for like 500 years. But then suddenly issues became a thing. Really, really big issues. So we're looking at like the end of 1900s, like about 1990s. Suddenly, mysterious vampires, the harbingers of skulls, appear and they start claiming vengeance on the Giovanni for reasons that they don't themselves fully understand. The Giovanni, that is, harbingers of skulls, really know why they're doing this, like fairly severely, to a point where it really shakes the Giovanni clan. Then the sixth great maelstrom happens, which is another superstorm in the underworld, and that happened in 1999. Now, this is Wraith lore, and technically, Wraith lore ends in like at the end of the world apocalypse, but apparently, that lore will probably get changed as there is an interest in reviving Wraith. So, I'm gonna try to kind of step around it, but effectively, Vampire City of Enoch was being attacked with a relic nuke at the same time as another guy was all like, gee, I wonder what happens if I set off a relic nuke inside the mouth of oblivion. Yet the timing of that was off. What happened was the release of energy so strong that it has woken up like a whole bunch of gods, wraiths, various undeads, like a whole bunch of people got like released from wherever they were being held, like whole armies got vomited back up. Um More notably, on the surface, it woke uh, the main vampire for the Ravnos clan, and that kickstarted the Week of Nightmares, which we have already talked about. But to summarize, because those two relic nukes were set off at the same time, the underworld went tits up, and a whole bunch of wraiths perished in that. And what do Giovanni rely on? Wraiths. Not good. Not good at all, especially not while you're being attacked by harbingers of skulls. So effectively, Giovanni got really played into a corner, and by late 2010s, they had to call a meeting where they became Clan Hekata. And another thing to note is that before this meeting was called, Giovanni themselves noticed that everything's going tits up, and they blamed Augustus Giovanni for it, and he has mysteriously disappeared. It is entirely unclear what has happened to him. Somebody might have eaten him, somebody might have killed him out of pure spite, or he might have just decided to lay low, but all the rates that he was still controlling himself were set free, and they were biting the Giovanni in the ass. So things went really, really tits up for the Giovanni to a point where the whole let's call in all the necromancer families and see if we can have a combined front what was done out of pure sheer desperation. So that is what they did. They called the whole meeting and they were accepted to be part of Clan Hekata as a member, not as a ruler. The ruler is now the mysterious Capuchin, which may just be Lazarus, or may just be a ghosty, or it might be three people at once. Yeah, Vampire the Masquerade has complicated lore, and a lot of things are left for like storytellers' interpretation. And also, it is implied that whoever the Capuchin is, more than one person is using its identity to like orchestrate this whole big thing. But more chances than not, it's like the leftovers of the Cappadocian clan. Because once again, the biggest mistake that you can do is apparently kill a necromancer. They don't die. They go to the other side and they're kind of knowledgeable about it, so they continue going about their business, doing their things, and they are now kind of mad with you, and they have all the time in the world to come back and exact revenge. So, never kill a necromancer. It kind of ends in a very weird, never ending cycle of necromancer warfare. So, that was a big, big mistake on the Giovanni part. Now, in version 5 of the game, as Giovanni is no longer its own clan, but just part of the Hekata clan, they do get like their own lore sheet that you can invest points into if you want to take your background in Hekata clan as being one of the Giovanni that joined the Hekata clan. So, for example, 1 point will give you a cousin's ear. The Giovanni is entitled to ask direct questions of other Giovanni once per session at the cost of having to answer a question in return. They're also entitled to a favor from mortal family members once per story, equivalent to 3 dots in allies. For 2 dots, you will get Faded Glamour. The Giovanni retains some cachet in the kata, despite the fact that it's not wholly their clan anymore. Once per session, the Giovanni is permitted 1 automatic success to any social roll against another Hekata vampire, ghoul, or retainer. For 3, you get Petty Cash. The Giovanni is a favored person and has access to a substantial bank account with 4 free dots to spread about resources and retainer backgrounds. These can be revoked at any time by the elders if they are crossed with this person. So, whatever you do, don't upset your grandpa. Your grandpa will be very upset. At 4 dots, you get Spectre Servant. The Giovanni has inherited a Spectre Servant, which acts as a 5 dot ally. 4 dots in effectiveness and only 1 in reliability, but effectively you have a own personal ghosty, and at 5 dots you get aspiring Anziani. The Giovanni provided to be a shrewd political operator during the family reunion which is that whole event where they're like, everything went tits up. Okay, let's save our guides hides and just call in all the necromancers and see if we can work something out. Earning 5 dots of status among the Hekata and can get a private audience with the Capuchin every few stories. That's, that ruling guy that really played the long game over there and is more likely do not related to the Cappadocian clan, the one that Giovanni kind of eradicated. Those meetings must be like really awkward. If I was that dude, I would so like really lord it over them, lord it over Giovanni. But we still have to address Giovanni's disciplines. So before the whole V5 version of events has happened, they would have potence, which is the ability to hit hard. They have dominate, which is the ability to control one's mind, and they get necromancy. But after they joined Clan Hekata, they get auspex, which is the ability to see the unseen, to see ghosties, to see auras. Oh, but they can exchange this for dominate, which is the ability to control minds, fortitude, which is a thicker skin, and oblivion, which is the merger of necromancy with shadow tentacle abilities, because version 5 of the game is a little bit weird and they merged those together. Now, the issue with Giovanni, every single vampire has a downside, and it also always has been that they had a painful kiss, like a painful bite. Normally, if you bite somebody, they experience ecstasy that keeps them still, and your victim doesn't really want to run away. In this case, they're paralyzed and they're feeling intense, incredible pain. And considering that vampires, for the most part, are asexual as far as their sexual organs are concerned, but they do experience intimacy and pleasure with one another by drinking from each other. When all you can offer is endless pain, that is not very, I don't know, nice. So like, mm, but their their issue became the whole clan Hekata's issue. When the whole clan Hekata got formed, everyone else's downsides got converted to the downside of Giovanni. And like Samedi were rotting. It wasn't really clear if Samedi were gonna have like actual immortality or whether at some point they will just fall apart into dust. They were like a very young bloodline, so it was questionable if they were actually immortal. Now, Cappadocians used to have really pale skin, and also their skin used to like shrivel up and stretch over their face and bones, making them look really, really bony in general, kind of exposed their skull a lot. Hence why when they joined the Sadat, they became Harbinger of Skulls. Lamia's bite used to spread disease, which isn't great. So, for a lot of the other bloodlines that joined into this one mass bloodline, having a painful bite might have been the lesser of the evils that they were suffering, though I am not entirely sure how the curse kind of selects which of the downside sticks and which don't, outside of like there being some sort of fated individual just going eeny miny meeny mo. It's gonna be that thing in particular that plagues you all. You're welcome. One thing to note is that, remember how Cappadocians would be having really, really like ghostly death paler? I don't want to say pale skin because that would really depend on, the kind of skin tone that you had in life, but they looked like proper dead. They looked devoid of blood, and they couldn't change that. So if you had melanin, you kept your melanin, but you looked as if all of your blood got drained out of you, which is not a very nice appearance. Yeah, some Giovanni like retained that. And with that, they also retained the ability to learn necromancy without anyone teaching them. The family was always very, very suspicious of those particular Giovannis because they could be classed as Cappadocians, but as they were part of the family, they weren't really removed or eradicated because they were still kind of Giovanni and not Cappadocian, but also they kind of were expressing all the Cappadocian traits, which is like suspicious, like really, really, really suspicious. And that, my friends, is kind of all that I have on Giovanni. That's probably not all that exists on Giovanni, and I would encourage you to read the Wikipedia link in the description down below because having a deep dive into Vampire the Masquerade lore is just really fun, yo. And now I have done all the clans and I have ran out of necromancers to cover because I covered pretty much everything that merged into Clan Hecata. So what we're gonna move on and cover is the bloodlines that Mirta herself like really enjoys because they're weird. And to make it confusing, I'm gonna name it Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines. You know, like that game. And later on, at some point, we're also gonna cover crossbreeds and vampire adjacent creatures that were vampires at some point and like got modified by magic or that started off by something that was entirely not vampire just because that is also something that interests me, so you can look forward to all of that. And for now, thank you so much for watching. If you like these series, then like and comment and tell your friends about it because this is a niche tabletop game, so YouTube doesn't quite do that. So if people can like spread it around by the word of mouth, that is normally really, really, really helpful. And also really thank you for my Patreon supporters that allow me to make videos such as these. I'm gonna return the next Friday, which with more Vampire the Masquerade tabletop content, though we will no longer be talking about necromancers. So, see you then, and toodaloo for now.